The UN peacekeeping unit was rotating posts, and the final deadline was fast approaching. Then I discovered my name glaringly listed on the roster for the Saudi peacekeeping contingent, but my direct supervisor, Diana, is my wife, the one I've been secretly married to for 5 years. My limbs went cold. I almost stumbled into her office, scared. Joel was just joking with you. This is a minor thing, just submit a change request later. Joel, her adjutant, cocked an eyebrow with smug satisfaction, clearly waiting for me to blow up. I just looked at them once, then turned and left in silence. If even something like sending me into the meat grinder can be treated as a joke, then any further entanglement is meaningless. I folded my ballistic vest and uniform, solemnly hung on my Special Forces dog tag, and resolutely headed for the front. Diana, however, lost her mind. I told you to change it and you didn't. You could die. That's none of your business. Chapter 1. When I saw the name, Christian, glaring on the document, I felt as if I'd been frozen in place, mouth half open and unable to speak. The teammates around me noticed. The whole dorm erupted in an instant. Are you kidding me? Only Christian is being sent to the Saudi front. Weren't we supposed to get to go home this year? How can this happen? They looked at me with pity, unsure how to console me. Gabriel, who slept on the top bunk above me, ground his teeth in anger and punched the bed slat. The higher-ups talk out of their asses. They promised Christian would be promoted if he came home. Now they're trying to screw him over. I finally came back to myself, throat tight and dry, unable to utter a single word. The whole company knew how much I had schemed and struggled to secure this reassignment home. What they didn't know was that all of it was for the sake of being able to openly have a home with Diana. Now this roster felt like a meteor that crashed down and shattered every unrealistic fantasy I had. There's still hope, the document hasn't been stamped. Gabriel suddenly slapped my shoulder and lowered his voice. You and Diana are close, right? Go beg her. Saudi Arabia isn't a joke, shells don't have eyes. Stealing myself, I clutched the document and went to Diana Wu's office. When I pushed the door open, Joel was plastered to her side, pretending to point at things on the computer. What's with this reassignment document? I asked. She looked up casually, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Scared, are you? Joel played a little joke on you, see if he could frighten our brave Captain Christian. Besides, it hasn't been stamped. Just submit a change request later and it'll be fine. My fists tightened until the roster crumpled nearly into a ball. A joke? You think this is a joke? Diana sniffed at the bitterness in my voice and frowned. If it's not a joke, what is it? You're trying to pin something on Joel. I hurled the wad of paper hard against the wall behind them. I could no longer contain my anger. If I hadn't noticed, would I have just hopped onto the transport headed for Saudi and been sent away in a daze? That's abuse of power. If I press it, he can be sent straight to a court-martial. Diana scoffed. The chill in her eyes cut almost to my core. Are you stupid from being in the army? Filing complaints over this kind of trivial nonsense. Can you stop acting like a child? Why are you always targeting him? She snapped, shielding the aggrieved-looking Joel behind her and slamming the laptop shut. He's been my adjutant since he joined the unit. He's been with me so long he's like family. Because you're jealous you turn your own people against them. Christian, I really don't understand you anymore. The atmosphere in the office dropped to freezing, nearly coagulating my blood. I gave a bitter twist of my mouth and stayed silent. Diana had been my immediate superior since I first joined the Special Forces. From her soldiers to her husband, from courting to marriage. I remembered that training session when I collapsed from overwork. When I woke, she was at my bedside, juggling official work with one hand while adjusting my four with the other. I remembered that mission where I stormed through a hail of bullets alone into enemy lines, and she confessed over the radio, trembling, Christian, come back to me safely, and we'll get married. A love full of thorns lasted 5 years. It should have culminated in a proper life together after this year's return home. But now, the coldness between her brows and the crumpled paper on the floor made me close my eyes. 5 years of marriage, it all felt like nothing more than a joke. Chapter 2, Bang. I slowly lowered my pistol and glanced at the target. The score was miserable. When your mind is a mess, your aim follows. Reloading. I was about to resume practice when a voice called from behind. It was Joel. He leaned casually against the wall, a smug smile tugging at the corner of his lips. Christian, practicing again. I came to ask, for the UN banquet tonight, is it okay if I go with Diana? His tone carried a touch of feigned reluctance, but the satisfaction in his eyes was undisguised. You know how foreigners love those ballroom dances. Since Diana doesn't have a partner, I guess I'll have to step in. I had seen this scene countless times since he became Diana's adjutant. He always played the role of the diligent assistant, appearing reluctant about her reliance on him. Yet terrified that I might miss his smugness, I fired a shot casually. He flinched, his legs trembling. I sighed. I couldn't understand Diana anymore, nor how she could ever fall for someone like him. All smooth talk and cheap cunning. Nothing else. I still remembered when Joel had first taken the post. He was clumsy. Even lost one of Diana's important documents. She nearly kicked him out of the unit. She had complained to me more than once about how useless her adjutant was, saying she'd have him gone soon. It was I who persuaded her to give the newcomer another chance. That's how Joel stayed. Never did I imagine that instead of improving his work, he'd focus on stealing from my life. An evening cup of hot tea, warm soy milk and fried dough sticks in the morning. Little by little, he quietly took my place. Rumors spread through the unit that Diana had fallen for him. Every time my comrades mentioned such gossip in front of me, my heart felt pierced by ice, and I didn't even have the right to stop them. As their superior, Diana not only ignored the rumors, she just patted my shoulder. Everyone's under pressure. Let them talk. As long as we know who we love, that's all that matters. The sound of gunfire roared. But does she really know? I thought bitterly, glancing at Joel, pale-faced from fright, before turning to leave, only to run right into Diana rushing toward me. What are you doing here? Where's Joel? Before I could speak, Joel darted out from behind me. Diana. I came to ask Christian's opinion. He didn't seem happy, he just kept shooting. Diana's pupils shrank. She grabbed his hands, trembling, firing. Did he hurt you? Which way was he shooting? She was so anxious her hands shook, forgetting entirely that guns on the range are fixed and can't be aimed at people. By the time she realized, I had already stepped outside. Christian, was that really necessary? She shouted after me. Joel came to inform you out of consideration. If you don't appreciate it, fine, but why scare him? Still hung up on that joke? Haven't we moved past it? She looked at my back impatiently, all the while soothing Joel in her arms. Her words made it sound as if I were the unreasonable one, the jealous relic who didn't understand modern boundaries. Fine, let whoever wants to make those jokes keep making them. I'm done playing along. I sneered, considering my feelings. If he truly cared, he wouldn't be clinging to you all day, bringing you tea, playing the considerate puppy. He wouldn't be acting all cutesy in front of the entire unit just to get your attention. We're all grown men. Isn't it disgusting to play those cheap tricks every day? Joel's hands twisted nervously. Each word I said made him flinch, until tears finally rolled down his cheeks, dripping onto Diana's collar. Her expression darkened instantly. Christian, when did you become such a petty, hysterical woman? Holding Joel in her arms, she gave a mocking laugh, as though she'd had an epiphany. I get it now. Jealousy really does make people ugly. Chapter 3. My heart skipped a beat. I never imagined she would humiliate me like this. He could skip every bit of training and just orbit around Diana all day. He could shamelessly fawn over her, basking in her favoritism. But I never once felt jealous of him, because as a soldier, I understand the weight of responsibility I carry. I thought Diana did too, but now I see she's long since grown tired of our cold, hidden marriage, lost instead in the sweetness Joel offers. Her heart has already turned completely toward him. All right, Joel isn't as petty as you. Just apologize, and this will be over. That absurd remark extinguished my anger altogether. Lowering my gaze, I muttered just one word before turning away. Impossible. When Diana saw the ice in my eyes, her expression softened. For once, she reached out and grabbed my hand. Stop it. But unlike before, I didn't yield so easily. I didn't even look back. Not her angry stomping, not Joel's quiet sobs behind me. None of it made me stop. It was time to pack my bags. The clock on the dorm wall ticked on relentlessly. I stared at my name tag in my hand, lost in thought. Just one more night before I'd head to that war-torn, unfamiliar land. And yet, I had no intention of filing a reassignment request. I picked up the military phone and searched for Saudi Arabia. No keywords were needed. The top 10 headlines were all human tragedies born from war. My fingers trembled as I clicked through them one by one. In one photo, a little girl's hopeless eyes among the ruins stabbed straight into my heart. After a long moment of silence, I stuffed my uniform and bulletproof vest into the suitcase. Leaving Diana didn't seem so terrifying anymore. Compared to all this chaos, there were far more important things waiting for me to do. I had just finished packing when Gabriel burst through the door in a panic. Christian, Diana and Joel are together. My heart lurched, but I didn't speak. Gabriel, sweating, grabbed me by the arm and pulled me to my feet. What the hell are you doing here? That's your wife. Men, you're just gonna let that slide? I wasn't surprised he knew the truth. He was my closest brother in arms. After all, he had seen everything, all the hints I tried to ignore. Even though I had decided to let go, I couldn't refuse Gabriel's good intentions. Fine then, I'd see her betrayal with my own eyes. At the UN banquet, elegant jazz music floated through the grand hall. Joel held Diana tightly by the waist as they moved among diplomats and officials. The lights glimmered on their faces as they gazed into each other's eyes, the air between them thick with suggestion. Didn't expect Joel to dance so well. Yeah, who knew they'd be such a perfect match? Diana's been single for years, it's about time she thought about her own happiness. That adjutant seems like a good fit. The chatter grew louder, every curious gaze pushing the two closer together. As the music reached its climax, Diana's skirt swept gracefully through the air, and then she leaned gently into Joel's arms. "Diana, may I?" Joel's eyes glistened as he slowly leaned toward her lips. The air was thick with intimacy, the kind that steals everyone's breath. But suddenly, Diana frowned, pulling away and glancing around the room. Joel's face went instantly pale. He knew who she was looking for. Our unit was in charge of banquet security, and right then, Gabriel and I walked through the door. Diana rushed toward me at once. "Finally, where have you been? I admit I overreacted this afternoon, but you can't just throw a tantrum and skip duty. Be good," apologized to Joel, "and everything will go back to normal." I pressed my lips together, still reeling from what I'd just seen. "You know my character," I said quietly. "I don't bow my head, not ever." Her patience snapped in an instant. She grabbed Joel by the arm, dragging him close. "Fine then, watch carefully." All eyes turned toward them. Joel's knees nearly gave out. His voice quivered, thick with false remorse. "Diana, I just got carried away." I couldn't help it, but Diana threw herself into his arms, wrapping her hands around his head. "No one's blaming you. Let's continue." Laughter and applause rippled through the hall as she kissed him, fiercely, passionately. Even a few senior officers just shook their heads and chuckled. Watching that scene, my breath caught, my feet frozen to the ground. It was a long while before I managed to drag myself away with Gabriel. I hadn't been to the front in years. There was still so much I needed to prepare. Chapter 4. Whatever little contact Diana and I still had completely vanished. After the banquet, she spoke to me one last time. "Did you change your reassignment order? It'll be finalized tomorrow." What if I didn't? Her expression shifted, but she still folded her arms with that same arrogant confidence. Still being stubborn. "You'd really go to Saudi just to spite me, to throw your life away? I know you can't bear to leave me, or the future we were supposed to have. As long as you apologize to Joel, once we're back home, we'll have our wedding. Isn't that what you've always wanted?" I ignored her and walked away. Empty promises, I didn't need them. After traveling through multiple checkpoints, I finally boarded the transport bound for Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, right before departure, during the pre-war assembly, I saw a familiar face. "Soldiers from Country A, please welcome your UN commander, MS Wu, who will deliver your pre-deployment address. Let's give her a warm round of applause." I never thought the woman who once said going to Saudi was a death sentence would have the nerve to come motivate us. I stayed silent, playing along with the farce. The hardships of military life hadn't dulled Diana's natural beauty, they had only added a deeper, mature allure. Many of the young soldiers saw her as their dream woman, and on the eve of war, that admiration only burned brighter. Applause thundered across the field. Even a few playful whistles, unthinkable in a formal military setting, pierced the air. I clapped stiffly, watching her climb step by step onto the podium. Joel followed right behind her, as always, keeping to her shadow. The moment others noticed, whispers began spreading through the ranks. "Who's that guy? Her husband? Probably her adjutant. But they look awfully close. Maybe there's something going on." My goddess shattered my dreams already. My face remained expressionless, though my palms were clapping harder and harder. After her long-winded speech, it was time for the open QA. A young soldier, red-faced, took the microphone. "Commander Wu, do you have someone you love?" Good-natured laughter spread across the courtyard, but my heart clenched tight. Her ears turned red. She hesitated before answering. "Yes, I do. We're about to get married." The soldier's eyes dimmed, but he pressed on, unwilling to give up. "Is it your adjutant, ma'am?" Her voice faltered. Then she caught Joel's gleaming, hopeful gaze. "Yes." Inside, there wasn't even a ripple, just a faint, almost amused smile tugging at my lips. Of course it was Joel. It couldn't possibly be me, the nameless soldier she'd kept hidden for 5 long years. As I climbed back into the transport truck, the smell of gunpowder and sand seemed to drift toward me. It was time to go. After the assembly ended, Diana stood watching the convoy drive off into the distance. A strange unease coiled in her chest. "Country A's contribution to world peace is remarkable," a diplomat said warmly, stepping forward to shake her hand. "They even sent their elite special forces into combat." But the moment he said special forces, Diana's ears seemed to stop working. She couldn't process a single word after that. "I remember our country only dispatched regular units. None were assigned to frontline operations," she stammered. The woman who had always been smooth-tongued now found her words tangled and heavy. "The special forces you mentioned, who are they?" Chapter 5. The Saudi sun reeked of rust and gunpowder, scorching every inch of exposed skin with ruthless heat. The yellow sand had been plowed open again and again by artillery fire, its original color long forgotten. Clad in a heavy bulletproof vest, Every breath I drew felt like swallowing blades. The field hospital was nothing more than a cluster of oversized green tents, where the stench of disinfectant and blood mingled into the unique smell of hell itself. After tending to a shallow grazing wound on my shoulder, I leaned against the frame of a makeshift cot and gulped down half a canteen of murky water. My muscles twitched from exhaustion. Days of relentless clearing operations had left me numb and aching, yet my mind was frighteningly clear. Here, there were no politics, no games, only survival, and the duty to protect. When I saw that little girl huddled in the ruins, clutching a torn doll, her eyes void of everything but despair, something heavier, something truer, began to fill the hollow space in my chest where the name Diana once was. This place needed guns. Yes, but it needed hope even more. The tent flap suddenly burst open, tearing through the stifling air. Against the glare of the sun, a figure stumbled in, dragging behind her a trace of perfume utterly out of place in this wasteland. Even with her hair disheveled, her expensive suit covered in dust, and red veins webbing her terrified eyes, I recognized her instantly. Diana. She looked like a cornered animal, a wounded mother defending her last cub, her eyes bloodshot, voice raw as she tore through the groans of the wounded around us. Christian, are you insane? All this, just for that stupid little thing? You really came here to die over it? Our relationship, 5 years, 5 damn years, do they mean nothing to you? Her voice cracked under the weight of anger and fear, her body trembling uncontrollably. The air froze. The few bandaged soldiers stared, dumbfounded. A nurse's tray clinked faintly in her shaking hands. A dull pain pulsed from my shoulder wound. I set the canteen down and met her distorted face, my voice steady, too steady. A little thing. My tone was calm, gritted with the roughness of the battlefield. Diana, that little thing you're talking about was Joel putting my name on a death roster as a joke. That little thing was you taking the letters I secretly left in your desk drawer on every birthday and praising Joel for his thoughtful surprises. That little thing was you shifting the blame onto me for his mistake when he lost the evaluation file that would have earned you your promotion. And you said I failed to safeguard it properly. I stepped forward, ignoring the way her face drained of color. The shards of memory I'd tried so hard to bury now cut their way out, one by one. That luxury briefcase you loved so much, the one with the broken handle. I crossed 3 cities to find an old craftsman to repair it. Yet you were the cheap one Joel picked up at a duty-free shop and said he was so considerate. Last New Year's Eve, the camp was in chaos. I guarded the comm station for 3 straight days without sleep. When it was over, you scolded me for missing your planned video call, not knowing Joel spent that night drinking wine with you, complaining I was too busy. Each word was a grain of sand ground deep into a wound that would never close. Every time, every single time, you chose his side. You made excuses for him. You erased his mistakes. With every choice, you carved the distance between us deeper. Out here, every bullet whistling past my ear feels more real than whatever you call love. I looked around the tent, at the faces young and old, all marked with dust and blood, then back into the emptiness in her eyes. I didn't come to Saudi to die, and I didn't come to fight with you. There are children waiting to be pulled from the rubble. There are old men whose hollow stares mirror the cracked concrete back at the range that night. The chamber of my gun now holds their lives. As for you and me, I paused, pressing each word like the final bullet into the magazine. The moment you turned my life into the price of Joel's indulgence, we were done. Diana, don't ever step onto my battlefield again. Chapter 6. Life on the front line was measured by explosions and gunfire. Joel's face, twisted by jealousy and hate, and Diana's frantic screams were quickly ground to dust beneath the sharper reality of war, escorting civilian convoys through crossfire, dragging trapped women and children from collapsing buildings under the threat of RPGs, holding down a mangled limb while the doctor performed an amputation in a crude medical tent. Every mission left my body shattered and reassembled anew. Yet beneath the peacekeeping insignia on my arm, my heart had never felt so steady. In the reports of international observers, the name Christian began to appear frequently, often followed by notes like exceptional tactical proficiency and extraordinary leadership and self-sacrifice under extreme pressure. Another star was quietly pinned to my shoulder. My responsibilities expanded. Now I was coordinating multiple joint squads. Then, on a night soaked in torrential rain, lightning split the sky wide open, and in that flash of white, a figure appeared in the mud like a phantom. Joel. He was drenched to the bone, his expensive wool coat caked in mud, hair plastered to his head. The smugness once glued to his face had been replaced by something pitiful and venomous. Like a hyena cornered in its own trap, he stormed through the flaps of my command tent, eyes bloodshot, locking on my back as I marked new safe zones on the map. Christian. His hoarse voice cracked, spittle flying onto the table. You happy now? You satisfied? You bastard. He leaned across my desk, shaking with rage. Because of you. Diana's done. She retired. She's gone to some godforsaken monastery in the mountains. Spends her days praying to Buddha, for you. the walking corpse who ruined her life. And now me, I got dragged down too, promotion frozen, reassigned to warehouse logistics. It's all you. You destroyed everything we had. Outside, the rain hammered down, thunder rolling beneath the distant thud of artillery. I set down my stylus. The glow of the tablet screen lit my face, calm, unshaken. Compared to this hysterical man, the suspicious movement reported by last night's patrol was far more important. Joel, I said, my tone like rain-soaked iron. Diana's path was her choice. So is yours. Don't you fucking play saint with me, he roared, slamming his hands on the table, rattling the water cup. She did it because of you. She can't get you out of her head. You cold-blooded bastard. She kneels in front of the altar, chanting your name. You. Suddenly, the radio on my desk shrieked to life, a high-pitched alarm. Red light flashing violently. Emergency channel. I snatched up the receiver. Joel's shouting cut off mid-word. Falcon here. Go ahead. The voice from the other end was breathless. Tense. Eagle's Nest. Eagle's Nest. Sector F7. Enemy mortar positions relocating. Direction southeast. Possible target, the temporary shelter. Repeat. F7 sector shows hostile movement. Copy. Initiate contingency plan. Evac team. Move. Suppression team. Positions now. Sniper cover. Lock on F7. My commands came fast, sharp, leaving no room for hesitation. The air in the command tent grew taut with urgency. The guard had already pulled the tent flap aside, waiting for me. I grabbed my helmet and tactical vest, then cast one last look at Joel, frozen in place, his face ashen. His outrage seemed so small, so absurd in the face of real life and death. Adjutant Joel, I said, fastening my helmet strap, my voice cutting through rain and static. There's no confession here for you, only children waiting to be rescued. If you have complaints, use the proper channels. Now move. You're blocking the door. I strode out into the storm. Cold rain drenched me instantly, but it brought a cruel kind of clarity. Behind me, Joel's figure faded into the downpour, swallowed by the rush of soldiers springing into motion. Later, I heard he left the camp in a daze, and stepped onto the edge of a disguised unexploded ordnance pit, collapsing part of the ground. He was dragged away screaming by the security team. The battlefield doesn't stop for heartbreak. The eyes of refugees still waited, somewhere in the dark, for the first light to return. Chapter 7. The scorching sands and flying shrapnel of Saudi Arabia left their final mark on me, a bullet that pierced through the outer side of my left calf. The bone was mended, but the nerve damage was irreversible. What remained was a limp that never faded and a deep, drilling pain whenever it rained. When the war ended and our rotation finally brought us home, I returned with several heavy medals pinned across my chest and a new insignia stitched onto my shoulder, a higher rank, a new weight to bear. That old scar running down my leg had become its own silent medal, a symbol of what the desert and blood had forged in me. The office was bright and spotless, floor-to-ceiling windows framing a city where traffic moved in perfect order. I took a newly issued badge, the emblem of my current post, and placed it deep inside a drawer, alongside the medals from Saudi. Atop them lay a single document, signed long ago but never submitted, our divorce papers. A knock came at the door. Sir, Deputy Director Christian. The young aide's voice carried both respect and hesitation. There's a Ms. Wu here. She doesn't have an appointment, but she insists on seeing you. Sunlight filtered through the blinds, striping the polished floor with alternating bands of light and shadow. The door creaked open slowly. Diana stood at the threshold between both. The crisp uniform had been replaced by a plain linen robe. A strand of dark sandalwood prayer beads looped around her wrist. Her face was bare, no makeup, no armor, and the once bright fire in her eyes had been replaced by a stillness that bordered on withered calm. Only the faint flicker buried deep within her gaze betrayed the turbulence she still couldn't silence. She looked thinner, frail, even like a tree weathered too early by frost and wind. Thank you, Lee. You may go, I said quietly, then gestured toward the chair across from my desk. Please, sit. She obeyed, folding herself onto the seat. Her fingers fidgeted with the beads unconsciously. Silence stretched between us. Her eyes lingered for a moment on my uneven gait as I moved around the desk, a fleeting flash of pain crossing her expression. You've changed a lot, she said hoarsely, her voice dry and cracked, like a riverbed long without rain. You're more dignified now. She tried to smile, but it came out stiff and broken. The front lines are a crucible, I replied evenly, lifting my thermos to take a sip of tea. The temperature was perfect, warm, not scalding. No anger, no tension, just the quiet distance born from years and a war's worth of silence. Her gaze drifted to the massive world map behind me, where peacekeeping hot zones were marked in different colors. Eventually, her eyes found mine again, and the composure she'd worked so hard to keep finally shattered. I came to repent, Christian. Tears broke free without warning, tracing clean paths down her bare cheeks before falling onto the dark beads in her hands. I was blind. I let Joel's cheap flattery cloud my judgment. I forgot what we went through, from raw recruits to soldiers standing side by side. I forgot how you took the blame to protect me, how, when I was burning with fever in that field hospital, you stayed at my bedside for 3 nights straight, even. Her voice cracked until the words caught in her throat. Her fingers clenched around the prayer beads as if to stop them from shaking. Even that time, she whispered, trembling, we had a child, Christian. 2 months, only 2 months after that secret border operation. I thought I was just tired. Her body shook with sobs, shoulders trembling as years of pent-up guilt burst like a broken dam. The only sound in the room was her muffled, fractured weeping. Outside, the hum of the city was sealed away. Time itself seemed to stop. I listened quietly. The memories she confessed unfurled before me like faded photographs, stirring ripples on a lake that would never again form waves. The sands and cries of Saudi Arabia had already reforged the structure of my heart. When her sobs finally softened into faint, uneven breaths, I spoke, calm, even, steady. Diana, it's over. She lifted her head sharply. Through her tear-blurred eyes flickered a fragile, desperate hope. These past few years, I said, gazing out at the vast, blue sky beyond the window, where a silver passenger plane drew a slow line across the horizon. I've understood many things, between the explosions and the ruins. When I turned back to her face, filled with pleading, awaiting either forgiveness or sentencing, there was no hatred left, and no love either. Only a kind of clarity that time alone could grant. If it weren't for that so-called joke on the roster, I continued, I'd never have had the courage to step out of that suffocating triangle between you, me, and Joel. I would have kept spinning in circles, until I drowned. It was the people in Saudi, the ones clawing for life, who gave me a new anchor. I stood. The old wound in my leg made the movement a little slow, but each step carried weight, not hesitation. Stopping before her, I poured a cup of warm water and handed it over. See these legs? I pointed to them. They carried me across miles of rubble, saved lives. They're damaged, but worth it. I paused, a faint trace of release in my tone. Joel's joke, and your choice to let go afterward, in their own twisted way, pushed me forward. Diana stared at me, frozen, forgetting to even take the cup. It was as if she were seeing me clearly for the first time. There was no resentment in my eyes, no condescension, no pity, only something tempered and vast, like steel forged in fire, the quiet strength of a soldier, the compassion of someone who had seen too much life and death. It had long since outgrown the narrow world of love and betrayal. Her hand trembled as she finally took the cup, fingers cold as porcelain. So, she started, her voice fragile. So, I finished for her, tone calm and resolute, like stating a truth long decided. Living our separate lives is the best ending we could hope for. The ones you should pray for aren't those who stayed behind on the battlefield, but the ones still fighting to survive in it. I reached for the old divorce papers on the desk and slid them toward her cup. Here, sign it. For both of us, it's freedom and a beginning. The office fell silent again. Diana stared down at the document for a long time. Then, with trembling hands, she picked up the pen. The tip hovered over the signature line. A single tear fell, blurring the ink into a small gray bloom. At last, without looking at me, she signed her name quickly, firmly, as if using the last of her strength. She set the pen down. Without another word, she straightened her thin, once proud back and walked toward the door. In the doorway's slanting light, her plain robe flickered, like a fading dream losing its final color. Chapter 8. The divorce papers were signed, filed, and locked away in the lowest drawer of the archives. It ended more than a marriage, it sealed off a floodgate, stopping 5 years of regret from ever flowing back again. The vines of entanglement were finally severed at the root. All that remained in sight was the long road ahead. A new star was added to my epaulet, and I was transferred to headquarters, where I now coordinated peacekeeping operations on a global scale. Outside my office window was no longer a landscape of smoke and dunes, but a city breathing in calm rhythm, traffic flowing like blood through ordered veins. Yet the files on my desk were heavier than anything I'd carried in Saudi. Coordinates of war zones crying out for aid, lists of casualty figures that bled across the page, photographs of children in the rubble, faces dulled, eyes emptied of light. Diana once said I had changed, become stern. Maybe she was right, but that sternness didn't come from power. It came from witnessing hell, from knowing the weight of the lives placed in my hands. Each time I reviewed an aid proposal, each time I authorized a new peacekeeping deployment, I saw the hollow eyes of that little girl clutching her torn doll. Every uneven step I took reminded me of what this leg had earned, of how its worth far exceeded any waste of life spent drowning in love and resentment. News of Diana came only in fragments, brought occasionally by Gabriel. He said she truly had shaved her head and taken vows in a remote mountain monastery, surrounded by incense and temple bells. There, in a small hall dedicated to world peace, she recited sutras every day beneath the eternal flame of the altar. She kept clippings from newspapers, reports of conflicts in the Middle East and Africa, laid out carefully, as if to shelter them under prayer. Gabriel's voice carried a strange heaviness. She only prays for peace now, and especially for you. I listened in silence, my fingers tracing the edge of a report detailing the shortage of medical supplies in a refugee camp. Her prayers were a practice, her redemption, but they had nothing to do with me anymore. If those chants could cross mountains and oceans to protect the children and the old still crying under gunfire, then her devotion wouldn't be in vain. But it came far too late. As for Joel, his name resurfaced one day in a military tribunal bulletin that landed on my desk. The logistics department was a place rich in supplies and in temptation. He had never learned restraint, embezzlement, smuggling of military goods, falsified accounts. Each charge was supported by irrefutable evidence. The report was cold and concise, listing his crimes in formal detachment. The once proud, manipulative face that had thrived under Diana's protection was now reduced to a name, printed at the bottom of a court notice. On the day of the hearing, I sat quietly in a corner of the gallery. Not because I had come deliberately, my schedule had an opening, and the case required high-level oversight. The courtroom was solemn, the national emblem glinting above the judge's bench. When the bailiffs escorted Joel in, I almost didn't recognize him. The hair once slicked with arrogance hung greasy and lifeless. The face that had known only smugness and venom now sagged with decay. His eyes were hollow, his back bent. The steel cuffs around his wrists caught the light, sharp, merciless. He looked like a doll drained of all its stuffing, left to rot. The judge's voice echoed through the chamber, enumerating his offenses. Occasionally, Joel's eyes flicked toward the audience, until they met mine. He flinched, then lowered his head even further, trembling. Perhaps he feared the sentence to come. Perhaps he feared the calm in my face. Maybe he expected anger, mockery, triumph, the same emotions he used to provoke in me, back at the shooting range, or on that night at the banquet. But there was nothing left. No anger, no satisfaction, only the quiet, steady indifference of someone who had outlived every storm. For me, this trial had nothing to do with revenge or satisfaction. It was merely a belated and inevitable reckoning. The power he schemed to cling to, the ill-gotten wealth he greedily seized, and the future he once tried to reach by stepping over my corpse, all were crushed under the cold weight of law beneath the national emblem. His hoarse pleas sounded so pale and powerless, like the hysterical accusations he hurled at me that rainy night in the tent. Diana did not appear. Perhaps the sound of the temple's bell had cut off this mortal world's judgment. When the gavel fell and the judge's booming voice announced his prison sentence, I watched his knees give way. Bailiffs practically dragged him out. His lips trembled. No proud word could escape them anymore. I rose and did not look back at the figure being hauled away. Outside the bronze courtroom doors, the early autumn sunlight was crisp. Wind lifted a few prematurely fallen leaves, whirling them in little eddies. The three-person farce that began with a joke roster finally ended with the judge's hammer. Dust settled. All the clamor, unwillingness, and pain turned into cold words filed in case records and the heavy echoes of prison gates. Back at the office, new files had already piled up on my desk. On top was an urgent plan to dispatch medical teams to the conflict zones in Congo. I opened the cover and my eyes skimmed the place names and numbers in need of rescue. Individual sorrow and separation were, before the immense suffering borne by humanity, as insignificant as a grain of sand in the desert. Diana's sutras chanted before the temple lamp and Joel's remorse behind iron bars had become chapters already turned. My battlefield would forever be the places marked in red on those maps, where smoke had not yet cleared,